For all things great iron and hard top, it's Kevlu and Steve since the Sandbox.
Since the Sandbox fans,
Yo,
what
yo.
is up?
Woo!
These three handsome faces back on camera.
Yes, sir.
And we switched it up a little bit. Steve's doing ball intros. I'm doing an NFL intro. What's
YouTube
going on?
intro.
YouTube intro all the more. But we're here. We're back. And we're talking NFL draft grades. And obviously, we're not going to go through all the teams. But we're going to go through just some of our teams that we thought, got high grades in the draft. And some that we thought, flunked, got a big fat F in the draft. I got a few teams I want to talk about, but I want to dive into one of your teams first because I'm sure we all know the four teams I'm going to talk about. My four squads.
Yeah. All right, Lou, I'll steal this first, and I'm going to go to two of the teams that I think were my worst graded teams.
Okay.
And both of these teams actually come from the toughest division in football, so the NFC West. So I'm going to give the Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to be very generous with this, and I'm going to give them a C. And the reason why I'm going to give them a C, I think it should be lower, but I'm going to be generous, like I said. They got a great value with the wide receiver position that they got and more, but they still didn't address that offensive line. I think that's a huge problem. I know that they traded a late draft pick to get Rodney Hudson the center, but let's get some more tackles. Let's get some competition for the guards. Like, it can't come down to Kyler Murray not having enough weapons, because that wasn't the problem. So why try and go and make that apparent? If you wanted to go and draft a wide receiver, you should have traded back from your original pick, draft a tackle, and get a receiver. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You can always get a guy in the third or fourth round. Like, they still have Andy Isabella, a third or fourth round guy that they had already drafted. So that's why Arizona I wasn't too fond of. And another team that needed offensive line, the Rams. They didn't have a first-round pick. They didn't have a second-round pick. And then their first pick of the entire draft happened to be another wide receiver. Tutu Atwell was a great value for where he was picked. But this poor dude at left tackle is almost 40 years old, and he's not going to be able to protect the quarterback.
Whitworth.
And he's great. You know what I mean? He's great. But you just need to get younger at that offensive line. You really do, and they didn't fix that need, and I think if there's anything that's going to restrict the Rams from being a serious Super Bowl contender, it would be that offensive line.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. And that's honestly, so I'm going to start off with a team that I think is a little controversial because I gave the Bengals a C. And my only problem is you could get the best receiver in the draft. But at the fifth pick, when the overall best O-lineman with no red flags at all, 0 red flags, is going to work everywhere he goes, is there. It does not matter who Joe Burrow is throwing to if he's not upright.
Yeah.
You just saw their biggest problem was they couldn't run the football because they have no O-line, and he got hurt because they have no O-line. Even with A.J. Green, they were still putting up points, every game. Tyler Boyd. Like, that's not the problem. And even if they got a guy lower in the draft, they still would have added a weapon and acquired the best O-lineman in the draft. So I think just for their positioning, it's a C. And then I'm going to talk about the Colts really quick.
Of course.
I love Kwity Paye at the 21st pick. I think that's a huge value. But to not get an O-lineman in pretty much the whole draft, I think was just a big downfall.
With the new quarterback.
Yeah, so, I put it this way. Even if your O-line goes from top 5 to top 10, I'm still happy with it, You don't need a top 3 O-line to win the Super Bowl. I think we kind of saw that with Tampa where, their O-line was good, but it wasn't the best in the league.
Yeah, for sure.
But I love the Ellinger pick in the 6th round. I mean, another QB in the room. It won't mess with Wentz's head because he's not a threat. It's not like you're bringing in Hurts in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, is this, what could happen, But I thought it was a decent draft, so I'll give him a B. I think just getting a good pass rusher with a good motor and a drive to win and play football, I think it was a good pick. So I'm happy with it. As long as we didn't go out and get Elijah Moore with the 21st pick. I would have been okay with it, but needed someone on the edge, and I think they got the best edge player in the draft.
All right, on to my four squads, my four teams: Dolphins, Bears, Bills, Pats. But I'll start off. So the team, I didn't really give any of these teams an F. Didn't give any of these teams an F, but the team I gave the lowest grade to was the Bills. I just feel like they should have addressed the running back position at some point in the draft,
Respect.
and they didn't. I mean, really, and again, they added, some linemen, and again, quality linemen are like pitchers in the MLB. You know what I mean? You can never have too many of them, but when your when your biggest flaw on offense is your running game due to not having a running back, not because your line's awful, then address that in the draft. You know what I mean? And they were in a position to. You know what I mean? They could have drafted one in the second or even the third round. I mean, and try to work them out. But I mean, it is what it is. Bills Mafia, let's get it. The Pats, I gave a B to the Pats. I'm glad that they did draft Mac Jones and that they addressed the quarterback position. I just do wish, even if they didn't trade up for Justin Fields, that they would have made a bigger push to try to trade up for Justin Fields.
Would never happen.
I feel like they just settled. Mac Jones, is he the guy? I don't know. Maybe, hopefully, we'll see.
Well, we heard now that the draft is over that the Vikings were interested in Justin Fields. So I think that if the Giants had stayed at 11 and made their pick rather than trading with the Bears, and we saw that Justin Fields was still there at 12 or 13. Yes, the Eagles probably could have considered drafting him. I don't think they would have, but they could have considered it. But I also feel like Philly was a team trying to stockpile draft picks, knowing that they really haven't been able to hit in free agency or the draft in the past couple of years. So I feel like the Pats maybe could have moved up to grab Justin Fields there. Maybe trade with the Cowboys. We heard that a little bit. I think the most important part for the Pats, and Lou, I see you have the Pats here, so after I say my statement, you can jump back in. The most important part was that they got competition and they didn't overpay. I'm not a huge fan of Mac Jones. Do I think he was a first-round talent? No. Do I think he's a first-round quarterback with the way the NFL is in 2021? Yeah, I kind of do. There's been worse guys, like E.J. Manuel to come out, Paxton Lynch to come out of the first round than someone with the likes of Mac Jones. So I definitely think that adding competition to Cam was essential. And can we please put down the words and wisdom of Jarrett Stidham of being the Patriots quarterback, please and thank you.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
I was for that day one.
See, but my only problem is with the Pats trading up, that was never going to happen. They did not want to draft a QB in the first round. Bill hated, he was sick to his stomach that he had to waste a first-round draft pick on a QB. Let's face it.
He probably was.
And one fell in their lap. So I gave them an A across the board. I mean, put it this way. You got a good QB who fits a system, who he knows already through Nick Saban. And the Pats run a system. Let's not forget that. And, if we're going to say they reached in any way, Jared Goff, who I like, was the second or first pick in the draft. Is he that much worse than Jared Goff in all likelihood? Probably not. You know what I mean?
Best out around the league, though.
Best out around the league. That's a fact.
Still with the Lions. We'll see. We'll see.
But Christian Barmore was a steal for the Pats. That was the best pick of the second round, hands down.
Yeah. We'll talk about that when we get into our next episode, which is the NFL best worst picks of the draft. You guys can check that out on our podcast. You'll find the description below. But I actually think that Christian Barmore pick was the best value of the entire draft.
Yeah,
the greatest pick.
Wow.
He's a stud. And that's me saying that to a Pats. I wanted the Giants to get him, but I mean, with the Pats and the Eagles getting in front of us, we couldn't get the Giants were about to get Landon Dickerson, but we couldn't get Devontae Smith, and we couldn't get Landon Dickerson. Philly's just taking our guys. Yeah, I'm happy with it.
But with all this Justin Fields talk, leads me into my next squad, the Chicago Bears. I gave them an A. I think, I do think the trade-off for Justin Fields was huge. I think it was essential. I think it was very necessary.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be successful, honestly. I think not only for addressing the quarterback position, but now, you keep Allen Robinson happy. You give him some kind of slight hope for the future. You know what I mean? Hoping that this guy works out because he's going to be better than Mitch Trubisky is, let's be real.
Yeah, he is.
So, great pick there. And then the team I gave the best grade to was the Dolphins. I think drafting another weapon for Tua was great after they, made it pretty clear that they're going to ride out with Tua. I think the drafting Waddle was huge. They drafted a couple tackles to keep Tua healthy. Obviously, They don't want to see the same thing that happened to Joe Burrow, and then they got an edge too. And their defense is already good and young, so just added more assets there.
Yeah. See, my only problem with the Bears is you're gonna throw Justin Fields into a team where you have to spend money on Robinson, and then who else is there? And then you have so much dead cap. It's just I think it's a good pick. But, like, I think he easily, out of all the QBs, is in the worst situation out of them all. Trey Lance is in San Fran. Zach Wilson at least has, like, a fresh start, so he's got a lease on life.
They didn't have a horrible draft either, the Jets. They addressed the needs for that quarter.
Exactly.
I don't necessarily think he'll be in the worst scenario. I think that
For a QB.
where he's going definitely isn't necessarily the most ideal for a rookie quarterback, especially when they already said that Andy Dalton's the starter. Like, you know what I'm saying? I think Justin Fields is good enough to go and play right now. But my whole thing is, if you're going to have Allen Robinson around and say Fields starts throwing to him in training camp and this and that, I can't have you get used to a wide receiver that we're not going to keep around. So if that's going to be the case with Allen Robinson, just move him for a picks now, whatever. And if you have a bad wide receiver room for a year, at least you got value. And then, you find a guy that Justin Fields can actually have somewhat of a relationship with. But doesn't sound ideal when Allen Robinson's franchise tagged and Anthony Miller's on the trade block.
Yeah, and then, like, think of this. Like, if Matt Nagy does run out his tenure, he's already got a head coach change. And, like, Matt Nagy has been awful with QBs already. And then, like, you bring in another guy. I don't know. I think he's in the worst spot just because at least Zach Wilson has, like, a new coach that's going to ride with him, and that's his guy.
Yeah.
So if the ship goes down, they're going down together.
True.
But, like, they could just cut Nagy or just cut... I don't know. I just think they're all in good spots, especially Trey Lance, even though I don't think he was worth the 3 pick.
We'll see. Kev, I'm happy you brought up the Bears because I want to talk about the teams that actually traded out of their original pick because I think those are all the teams that got the best grades. Mm-hmm. We got to talk about the Vikings, who had one of the most slept-on best drafts. I think the Giants had a really good draft, even though I would have loved the addition of offensive line. The Ravens, with the trade that they did in Orlando Brown, they got 2 ideal playmakers on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. Miami, they went all around the draft and got the guys that they wanted to benefit their system. So all those teams are really good, but specifically with the Vikings, trading back, getting future picks, getting Darisaw, getting Mond in a future quarterback, getting Chaz Surratt. He was a quarterback who's going to play linebacker from UNC. He's a stud. And Lou, your favorite interior lineman of the draft, Wyatt Davis to the Minnesota Vikings.
Let's go.
I think that's a great first 4 picks. And I think it's very coincidental that Aaron Rodgers might not be in Green Bay. So could this be the favorite in the NFC North?
Yeah. See, I love their picks as a whole, but for the future.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, how much better is Kirk Cousins going to get now that there's someone behind him? And if they see, because, like, they drafted the anti-Kirk Cousins, big, strong, can run the ball. If they're like, hey, like, this dude is, like, could start now, like, that's the future, and then you have to move Cousins. I think they made great picks, and in a couple years, I think the Vikings will be very good. I just think they got to cut ties with, you like that? Just cut them.
But, guys, that's going to wrap things up for our NFL draft grades. I know we had some fun with this episode. We love talking about our draft coverage, and this is putting it in the books until next year. Make sure you guys go and check out our podcast. We get a bunch of other content coming out. And make sure you guys leave us that 5-star review on the podcast. But before we end this episode, make sure you scroll down to the bottom, hit that like, subscribe, and put that notification bell on. Peace, guys.
For all things gridiron and hard top, it's Kevlu and Seasons a Sandbox.